Thank you very much, Jason. And our next panel is a panel discussion, really, or a first panel discussion of the day is titled "Spirits: Where Are We Headed, Spirits-wise in the country?" And I can't think really of a more star-studded or qualified panel to discuss this particular topic today than the ones that we'll have on stage shortly. Our moderator is Mr. Vikram Damodaran. Vikram is the Chief Innovation Officer at Diageo India and co-founder of the Diageo India Craft Spirits. He joined Diageo in 2019 and leads marketing innovation, R&D, and the Craft Spirits venture. He is fueled by his passion for brewing, and his primary focus is to build a portfolio of delightful beverages with the intention of putting India on the global map of craft spirits. He's also the co-founder of Diageo Ventures India, Diageo's India's arm that is dedicated to drive growth through disruptive offerings. We've also got Charlie McCarthy from WSET. Charlie joined WSET in October 2019 as Business Development Manager, EMEA for Spirits. He now teaches the Spirits qualifications from levels 1 to 3 and is part of the WSET team that delivers Spirits educated training. He also has, as Charlie was mentioning to me, he also has memories of bartending at Sukhinder's house when back in the days when he was a bartender. So a close connect, I'd say. Yeah. I'd now like to welcome Pankaj Balachandran on stage. Pankaj is the brand director for Short Story. Pankaj has propelled the young brand to make a significant impact in the Indian alcoholic beverage movement. Under his leadership, the brand has not only attained widespread success in the domestic market, but also international acclaim with multiple awards. Mr. Ashok Chokalingam, Head Distiller and Head of International Sales at Amrut Distilleries. Ashok assumed the position of Head of Distilling from June 2019 and has complete responsibility of single malts and premium brands from distillation to blending and bottling. And finally, Michael John D'Souza from Paul John. Michael is the master distiller and blender for John Distilleries, where he samples batches and barrels filled with the excitement of vatting and creating exquisite expressions. Welcome, Michael. A warm round of applause, please, for our panel. Take it away. No. Yeah.
But he's part of the panel.
Jason is part of the panel.
He's part of the panel.
Okay.
I will stand here.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks. Michael.
How about this? Can you hear me at the back? Yeah, perfect. First of all, a warm welcome to our esteemed panelists and a warm welcome to all of you, delegates, attendees, and partners of Brews&Spirits. Morning, everybody. I can't think of a better panel to have for me to host this conversation on the future of spirits. When Chanty actually spoke to me first saying, who should we get on the panel? We had a list, and it was a long list. And going back to what Sukhinder was speaking about earlier, but why isn't India doing a lot of things that he mentioned? This long list was a list of people that were actually doing a lot of things that India should be doing. And that's exactly who you have here on the panel. So I'm very, very happy to have good friends on the panel and new friends that I'm meeting today. So once again, welcome, and we'll get started. We're going to keep this very lively. It's going to be a set of literally rapid-fire questions. So I'll ask for your forgiveness once the panel is done, yeah? All right. First, we're actually going to start with Pankaj. Pankaj, welcome. Big fan of your spirits. Big fan of what you're doing at Countertop in Goa, one of my favorite places to go to. But I've got a question for you. We've been talking so much about the future of consumption. Who in your mind is the future consumer?
Hi, Vikram. So I think it's interesting that I've had the opportunity to work, in a multi-level capacity when it comes to running bars and seeing consumers in day in and day out. and now as a liquor brand, seeing consumers picking it up from retail shelf to consumer. I think India has grown in the last 7 years to a completely different level, I would say. People are really well traveled. Mentioned earlier, a higher disposable income. They are looking at craft a little more seriously than before. And I think it's a great move forward because I can see that change happening at bars, at restaurants, and also even in from the liquor shops and liquor vents. I think the future of Indian consumption and Indian consumers, for that matter, would be discerning consumers who are looking at quality over quantity. They want to try new things. Discovery has become a major impact. I think IWSR report I recently, with Jason, shared with us. It's very interesting to see how open we are to discovery, how open we are to trying new things. And interestingly, for the last couple of years, India has been a very heavy consumer of whiskey and consumer of brandy and rums. But if you see the last 5 years, what the gin industry has done, they started off with a single brand, and I think now we have over 10, 15, 20 brands coming from India. And it's a great progress, and that means that there is an opportunity for people who are looking at building other categories, like rum for that matter. We're still young, and I think there's a long way to go for so many other categories to be built within India. Mr. Sukhinder Singh spoke about rums as he's a big fan, and I see that we have our superstar rums, but we have not really explored rum as a category and grown rum entirely, and I'm sure that there will be more of such categories to be built, and I think consumers of the future will definitely be open to that idea of trying new things. Even when we talk about craft spirits like Feni, I remember something that my dad used to bring when he traveled to Goa or had a visit there, and I used to say, oh, this is terrible. But today there are consumers who are willing to try Feni. There are Feni cocktails being popular. I come from Goa. I enjoy my Urak and Feni seasons very well. So it's a very, very important and a big shift for the market, and it's exciting to see that openness that consumers have to try new things. So the future is, I think, building more and more categories that we already have, but has never got the light that it deserves.
Brilliant. Wonderful answer, Pankaj. And no wonder, you're from the industry, you've run restaurants, you've been part of brand ambassadorships, and it clearly shows. And coming back to what Jason spoke about hardly 10 minutes ago, right? The repertoire is increasing. New consumers want to try more, they want to experiment more. But I have a question for you, Ashok. In the world of whiskeys, you've been a pioneer in bringing Indian whiskeys to the world. And over the last 20 years that you've done this, what are the changes that you're seeing with respect to younger consumers? How are they reacting to Indian whiskey, especially the aged whiskeys, single malts? How are they reacting to it? Are you seeing a movement towards experimentation?
The Indian consumer space has changed a lot over the years, and especially I think I just basically noted down 4 different points. Of course, there are plenty to discuss. Just number one is exposure through the international travel. Now, traveling to Thailand is far cheaper and easier than going to Delhi from Bangalore. That's how it is. So that what happens is that gives you a lot of exposure to a wide variety of international brands available which are not available in India. So then when you come back, so you try to compare with what you have seen and what is an alternate that is available easily and affordable. And that basically drives the factor of trying more varieties of brands. I think in India we have roughly about 25 different brands of single malt across different players who are in the market. So that's basically one driving factor. The second one is, of course, what we have seen in the IWSR is also the per capita income. You are inching towards like 280 million middle class people, which is par with the total population of the United States. So that's sitting in like one country. So that is going to be a next leverage factor in terms of even if you take a fraction of population who can basically go and venture out and try different single malt, there's a big sizable population that you are talking about. That is another growth factor, what we are talking about. Then the general change in the consumer behavior, especially at the single malt space and premium brand, were quality over quantity. So those who used to drink a lot cut down and then go and appreciate. People like W said, and a lot of whiskey clubs in India, shaping the consumer behavior in terms of how to appreciate and drink it in moderation rather than going big bang. And then the last point is the way how communication has shaped all of us, from literally word of mouth to social media platform to quick messaging service, where if I have tried something today which is really good, the communication to you is instant, where you don't need to basically wait for me to come and meet you over the next week or so. All these factors put together is what driving the total synergy of different brands, and then is an amazing opportunity.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that view, Ashok. I have a hypothesis about Indian consumers, right? And I believe Indian consumers are desperate for new experiences. And I think we saw it for the first time with the advent of microbreweries across the country. I still remember when the first one came up in Bangalore. I'm a big fan of Geist beer, by the way, if Narayan is in the room. But having said that, I think people have also learned to appreciate what flavor tones mean when it comes to the world of beer or when it comes to the world of spirits. I don't see that happening enough on the spirit side, and it's happening extremely well on mainly beer, maybe a little bit of gins, slowly getting that way compared to the US or Europe. What do you think is going to drive that change, Michael? Like, you introduced a wonderful new gin, Malhar. I'm a big fan of that as well. So where do you think consumers are going to go in terms of flavor appreciation across spirits?
Talking about the evolution, see, let me talk about whiskey, right? Whiskey has been evolving. It's not a new phenomenon. It applies to all the other beverages as well. Okay. If you see today, there is a movement and growth outside the traditional whiskey producers. When I say traditional whiskey producers, I'm talking about Scotland and Ireland, right? So today, when we were growing up, other than Scotch and Irish whiskies, we were unaware about rest of the alphabet. Today, because thanks to social media, we are well aware. Today, there's a new generation of whiskey lovers out there. Creativity and innovation, this includes so-called AI, is flourishing across the world. Today, if you see, most of the producers, including distillers, they are using different manufacturing method, different casks, different ingredients to bring in new and exciting flavors. So, and also, today's youngsters, they are very experimenting. They are interested in discovery. Today, youngsters are shifting away from the traditional taste. They want something different. I see this world over as I travel. So end of the day, the bottom line is there is a tremendous interest in unique and special experiments and diversified flavors, as long as that experiment gives a better product.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks, Michael. And with this, we're actually going to move to Charlie. Charlie, I was just reading up your background, a very, very impressive background. Given your mixology background, so to speak, and given where India is in the world of agriculture, the sheer diversity of, botanicals, herbs, spices, and in agricultural products that we can actually use to distill bespoke spirits or just deliver beautiful experiences. What do you see the role of India as far as the global stage is concerned in terms of presenting great experiences when it comes to alcoholic beverages?
First of all, thank you very much for having me on the panel. It's an honor to be here with a lot of people I very much admire from the industry. For me, India globally is the sleeping giant. Not just in terms of volume sales within India, but in terms of incubating and chaperoning this idea of Indian terroir in spirits. Obviously, terroir is a concept that we're already familiar with in wine, and it's, you know, a controversial term in the world of spirits, to say the least. But I think India has got such a range of unique culinary, gastronomic, and agricultural expressions throughout the country. And it's something that people like Ashok has been helping to create that within whiskey. Pankaj with Short Story is helping to establish that in a very accessible way at the top end of the cocktail bartender scene. And around the world, Indian whiskey in particular is starting to be appreciated on a global level with Amrut, with Paul John. But I'd like to echo some of the things that have been said earlier. I think rum in particular is the single most exciting category for spirits in how Indian spirits are conceived of globally. And domestically within the spirits world, again, there is this kind of concierge role that the brands and the retailers and the F&B practitioners and hospitality have within elaborating and inviting the consumer rather than forcing education and forcing knowledge on the consumer. It's that idea of having the knowledge, having the education, and inviting the consumer onto that journey. And for me, everybody around the world knows the culinary traditions of India. And I think there's a really important moment coming up where everybody's going to be able to be exposed to how that is expressed in alcoholic beverages. And I think the world's open to it. And it's just a matter of pushing on an open door at the moment.
Brilliant. Can't wait for those times to begin. All right. Now moving to Jason. Wonderful presentation again, Jason. One of the things that we've always done with IWSR is validate our hypotheses. And it's an amazing platform that helps us make the right decisions. One of the things that we miss in IWSR is the small players. The startups that are actually driving the change aren't reported. So how do you marry the two together? How do I get to see the future and have hindsight that's 2020 at the same time?
Well, I'd like to speak to you if you want to speak to me. Yeah, I mean, obviously one of the things that distinguishes IWSR from a number of other companies I've worked for in the research space is the relationships that we have in the industry. But they're not just with the big players. I mean, obviously the big players, those relationships are very important to kind of setting the framework for the categories and giving you some idea of relative scale. But we don't not talk to the medium-sized or the small players. In fact, that's the thing that excites me as much as anything in a market such as India. I try and get around as many as I can. If you want to give me a long list of who to go and see, I'll go and see them. And I'll try and find them myself. And one of the reasons I'm here is to meet people like that. Steve and I are going to take a bit of time, obviously, the next day or two to go around the exhibition. Hopefully arrange a few meetings. I'm back here in January. If it needs me to come more frequently than 3 times a year, I will. You're right, it's the smaller companies are the ones that are more likely to be the future of the market because they're more nimble. But then the larger companies today used to be smaller, so they've still got a bit of that in their mojo, I think that rum's been mentioned here a couple of times. We know that there's some smaller rum companies up and coming. I found that one of the things that, certainly in India, probably in every geography to be fair, but one of the things that the lockdowns in India did was they decelerated demand, but they accelerated experimentation. So they kind of opened minds because you were sitting at home not doing very much. And people thought, sod it, now's the time I'll actually do that, I'll launch that. It's an interesting kind of technical thing here. I know this is not my ground, so correct me if I'm wrong, but the rums that are being spoken about and the rums that have got an opportunity here, if they are what is termed sugar-based, these follow the kind of the Caribbean formula. They're what is known as rum agricole. They're made from cane juice. They're usually much higher proof and much purer, and it's rum with an H. Now, there is one of those rums in the market today, here. I've tried it, it's very good. I've got a bottle at home. I'm not going to share it with anybody. They can't call it rum agricole. It's a protected name. So I've only been in the industry 4 years. I didn't appreciate the distinction. I'm supposed to be some kind of specialist. I didn't appreciate the distinction between rum with and without the H. So what does that mean? Well, that means that you can actually reset that, you know. This is rum from India. Never mind about the H or not. It's got it. So there are lots of opportunities. Let's not forget the fact that whiskey is actually, in India itself, 4 times the size of the rum and brandy markets, roughly. So let's not downplay that. Let's also acknowledge that imported whiskies have doubled in scale in the last 3 years, and local ISM, Indian single malts, are really coming on strong. The problem, it's not a problem, the issue with whiskey is that the market, the Scotch malts have set this kind of age in the brand, age in the bottle. That's the template. And depending on the different geographies, you can't stay in the barrel as long. With the rum I referred to, they ended up with 6% out of the barrels that they put down 12 years before. The same thing happens. So there needs to be a little tweak so that there's an appreciation that 5-year-old whiskey has as much character as a 10-year-old Scotch, if indeed it does. And then we've got maybe age in the brand rather than age in the bottle. There's some things, but you know, you've got a bit of oomph, you've got a bit of power, you've got the future is yours kind of thing. These things can be done. And yeah, any small players here, come and see me. Big guys as well, obviously. I very much want to go and see people that are starting out and get those numbers in the report as well.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Switching gears a little bit, and this is going to be an interesting question specifically for Pankaj. There are very few bar-led brands in the country, and these are brands created by people who fundamentally spent a lot of time behind the bar. Yours is one of those, and I'm damn proud of the fact that you've brought it out. Can you talk to us a little bit about the role of on-trade and retail and the role that they play in helping you build your brand?
100%. So, short story, and specifically as a brand, when we conceptualized it, it was very specific to cater to what can we think about as a great pouring spirit in speed wells for bars. Now, we were heavily dependent on international spirits for all this time, and we did not really explore IMFL the way it should have kind of been exploited, I believe. Or maybe I'm wrong, I'm too young in this. But with short story, the idea was very simple: to get people to be proud of what India can produce and use it in their cocktails, in their regular serves, whether it be 70% of most of the cocktail consumption and single serve consumption, usually in a bar, is white spirits, and we wanted to kind of take it head on, and that's why there's a gin, there's a vodka, and a rum, and it's very interesting to see. Even when we launched this spirit, we were specifically going after on-trade. And the idea was to establish a brand that bartenders and bartenders can use proudly from India, and they know that the quality is high quality, that they can use a classic cocktail like a martini or a Negroni, at the same time make a nice daiquiri or a mojito. And we saw that it had a massive impact on consumers going to these venues and trying, your liquid to lips is kind of taken care of immediately, right? And you see the same spirit being poured in 5 or 6 or 7 of the top bars in the country. There's automatically a sense that, okay, maybe I should buy them and try them out from retail. And for us, I think it's really worked out very well for us in a way that consumers seeing the product at a on-trade venue, appreciating it and enjoying it, and then going back and picking it up from the retail. So that cycle is very interesting to see, and I hope it continues, obviously. But we will also want to, I think retail still plays 70% of your volumes. It's the on-trade is a very small piece in that game. And I hope the next couple of years, what we will try to do is to build up the presence of the brands in the retail market as well. And it's been an interesting observation that on-trade really plays a major role in early brand conversions, people seeing the brand, interacting with it, liquid to lips happening, and I think it's the way to go, and more brands should do it. Yeah.
Excellent. And what that tells me is it just takes a lot of time to build a brand, especially in the world of alcohol, especially in India where it's a dark media market. So that actually takes me to a question which I'm going to address to both Ashok and Michael. Both of you have been doing this for over 2 decades now in terms of building up the credibility for your particular brands. And yes, this question is not on the list of questions that I sent you. But having said that, how do you really innovate with speed? Is speed even a factor when it comes to alcohol innovation?
The Indian whiskey on the international stage has come up a long way. Now, if you look back, in 2004, there were no world whiskey at all. There were only 2 players, Amrut and Penderyn from Welsh. That's it. There was no world whiskey category from single malt perspective at all, not even United States of America. Then, when Paul John came into the market in 2012, I think, 12, yeah. So then now, we have a group of at least like 5-6 distilleries on the international market from India. And then I think we are on a path to forge our own category. However, you have your own challenges now because the number of malt whiskey distilleries that has mushroomed around the world is so big. If you, as a consumer, walk into a store like a Total Wines in Texas, you'll go mad. There are about 1,500 SKUs of whiskey to choose from, which is ranging from $20 a bottle to $25,000 a bottle, which really makes it very difficult for the consumer what to choose and what not. So then, how do you basically differentiate yourself and be out of the pack is the only way, I think, is the innovation. I think that is what we are all trying to do, just to go away from the traditional way of making whiskey and try to be standalone by bringing innovative concept both in the distilling and maturation. I think the future for the Indian category on the international market is equally entertaining and challenging.
Thank you. Michael, your view?
So most of the things already Ashok has mentioned, but I would go further. I think as long as you have quality products, I think you can establish anywhere, not only in India, even abroad. So unfortunately, our history or the tradition has been that, Indians are cost conscious and not quality conscious. So fortunately today, the one tag has been removed, that is, we are not cost conscious anymore. We don't mind spending extra penny to buy good product. But it does not apply only to the consumers. Even the manufacturers has to be quality conscious. So once this happens, I don't think anybody can stop us.
Excellent. Wonderful future for Indian spirits, I'd say. Jason, you would like to add something?
I just want to say a couple of things on that. Number one is you've got an Indian diaspora whose behaviours can be copied by others in that region, nation, etc. So, you've already got a number of similar overseas targets to the composition of the market in India itself. And the other is, I mentioned the phrase earlier, from it'll have to do to more than good enough. The fact that product quality has improved and that's recognised. So, particularly by young consumers, it's a bit more difficult for us older guys to change our behaviours. So, have confidence that that is recognised. I don't think it's a big issue having, 50 different countries of whiskey on a shelf, because that encourages experimentation, and they'll find you if it's good enough.
Brilliant. Charlie, a question for you. As you spend time in education as well, what would you say about consumer advocacy and consumer education when it comes to appreciating spirits?
Consumer advocacy, is it? Thank you. Sorry, apologies for the loud volume there. I think consumer advocacy is essentially the ultimate goal of any brand. I used to work for Hendrix, and Hendrix were, in my experience, the single best brand in creating brand champions. Now, they're very clever in how they did it. They had a lot of bartender training. They focused on the on-trade. They had the single best piece of marketing I ever saw in my life, which is a little label on the neck of the bottle saying, in a recent survey of 100 gin aficionados, only 11 expressed a preference for Hendrix. It's not for everyone. Now, of course, that was entirely made up, but what it did is as soon as you taste this quite accessible spirit, you go, oh, I've got the elevated palate. I'm going to tell my friends about this. And so it made the consumer the champion straight away. I think the key to consumer advocacy is agency. The consumers have to feel that they have agency in how they're sharing and expressing knowledge. And I think the two keys to agency and instilling agency within the consumer, one is premiumization. The experience has to be a premium experience. The brand coding of the brand, as we see with, let's say, Stranger & Sons, for instance, extraordinarily well packaged and extraordinarily well conceived. And the other is the idea of knowledge sharing. Now, knowledge sharing is quite a complex matrix. Certainly one aspect of it, coming from a WSET point of view, is education. And knowledge sharing between consumers is actually not very different from knowledge sharing amongst bartenders. They kind of want to be the person who knows the most, and it's quite a competitive marketplace that way. They want to feel like it's the humble brag. It's the, oh, you might find this interesting, but actually the subtext of what they're saying is, I know something you don't know, and I'm going to share that knowledge with you as a means of elevating how I'm perceived within my social group. So certainly education is a big part of that. Innovation and discovery is a huge mainstay of that as well. And just to circle back to what we were talking about before about rum, I totally agree that not necessarily just at agricole style, but characterful rum and characterful spirits in general. And I think Indian gin is already there with that. Something that we're quite proud of at WSET is Maggie Campbell, who a lot of you will know as one of the preeminent rum distillers in the world. When she did our level 3 qualification, she said to me afterwards, I think that this is going to change the game for distillers around the world, not just because I learned something more about rum, because she didn't learn anything about rum doing our course, but because it's a multi-category qualification, she learned things about Baiju, she learned things about Koji in Japan, she learned things about how they do things in grappa production in Italy, that she can see as transferable skills across to her practice. So don't be surprised if you see some weird and funky stuff coming out of Barbados soon, because that's how innovation happens. I think I'm a big admirer of the IBD and the General Certificate in Distilling, but it is very much you're going to distill whiskey, you're going to distill rum. And I think that cross-pollination in innovation that we've seen, for instance, in the barrel programs coming out of Amrit, that cross-pollination of information happens amongst producers, amongst retailers, distributors, amongst bartenders, and ultimately that sinks down and seeps into the consciousness of the consumer. And as soon as they can find that one little gem of knowledge that they have, that they've keyed into, that they understand the link between the theory of how something is made and how that tastes in the glass, and that's what gets them excited. And I think that's almost like the golden ticket that everyone's looking for.
Brilliant. Ultimately, it's the consumer that decides what they want. So, thank you. Now, one last question, and this is going to go across the panel. So, Michael, if I were to give you a magic wand now, what would you want to see happen?
Well, it can be something that is exciting to our customers, a new sensory experience. As we do experiments every day. So why not something new? This one simple example is a blended whiskey, for example. Look at American whiskey. They have, for example, bourbon. Within the bourbon denomination, they have so many different products. They have Kentucky Straight, they have wheated bourbon, they have rye bourbon, they have rye whiskeys. You name anything, any grain, we grow it here. So why not, from different grains? Similarly to gin, we always say, in India, we need not dig deep to strike gold. It's around us. So even today, some of the distillers or manufacturers, they import the botanicals from abroad. Why not Indian botanicals? We have so much here. India is known for spices. So why can't we use Indian spices? Yeah, given a chance, I would definitely use different types of Indian grains to create something very, very exciting.
World full of Indian flavor, for sure. Thanks, Michael. Jason.
You don't need a magic wand. It's all coming to you anyway. Don't worry about it. I'd sort of issue a slight word of caution from the supply side. From what I see, and obviously the guys that are actually in the industry day to day either appreciate this or maybe I'm overstating it, but there is a bit of a problem with barrels, the availability of barrels. And when you consider that pretty much every spirit is either takes on the characteristics from a barrel, or you've got these finishes and limited editions that need those casks. A lot of that used to be Madeira or sherry. People are drinking a lot less Madeira and sherry. There's fewer barrels. The price of the barrels, so some of the underpinnings of the industry perhaps aren't quite as secure as one would wish in order to see this kind of growth. But you grasp that a little sooner rather than later, and you actually solve that issue. And the cross-pollination happens because sometimes that's the only barrel you can get. So the supply side is a bit of an issue. But the other thing I would say is, don't be afraid of scarcity. Don't be afraid of it taking a bit longer than perhaps your business plan says it should. Look at the Japanese whiskey industry. They've managed to sort of screw up supply because they weren't thinking far enough ahead 20 years ago. But what happened in the here and now? Prices went up and up and up. And now that scarcity is being addressed, the prices aren't coming down and down and down. So don't try and do everything yesterday. Take your time, take a little bit more time, and it'll all come to you. No problem.
I hope those dreams come true.
You'll be all right. Don't worry.
Charlie.
Thank you. I think from an innovation point of view, India has got a unique opportunity around ambient yeast fermentation across all its categories. The unique biomes that are available and the unique wild fermentation opportunities that are available across all categories in India is just mind-blowing. Another thing, just to talk about the spices a little bit, there's this emerging subcategory in rum called botanical rum, where it's not a spiced rum where the spices are added post-distillation, but it's a redistillation of rum with botanicals in the still. And I think that's potentially a huge area of exploration. One thing that obviously I'm going to say education is super important, and I'm really glad to hear that being echoed across all the speakers so far. One area that I think is critical for expansion into new markets, especially in the West, is design consciousness. And that's actually got nothing to do with the liquid. It's a really good case study of this is Sukhinder Singh has a master of wine called Don Davies working in the Whiskey Exchange. And Dawn has become one of, it would be not unfair to say, the gatekeepers of how to get a new spirit onto the market in the UK. And if you want to understand how brand design and brand code is important, there's a really interesting story that Dawn tells of when she was first approached by a gin company called Mermaid Gin. And they had a decent gin and terrible packaging. And she just gave them a bit honest advice. I think your gin is decent, I think you got terrible packaging. Mermaid Gin then went and did one of the most innovative redesigns of their brand code I've ever seen in my life. Amazing bottle, amazing 360 brand code. And they're all of a sudden they have one of the biggest champions in the world, and Donald Davies telling everybody in the world what an amazing gin it is. So yeah, innovation around production styles, around wild fermentation, the importance of education and the importance of brand code.
Totally. With an open roadway in front of us, stretching boundaries shouldn't be a problem, I'm hoping.
I'm
Pankaj,
sorry, I'll have to ask you to read that question out for me so that I say the right thing.
if you had a magic wand now, what would you see?
I think a lot of people did touch up on innovation. I think India is getting ready for what is there in the offer, other than what is in the offer. And it's interesting to see a lot many more brands are focusing on innovations in their respective distilleries, right? When you talk about Paul John and Amrut, also like what Stranger has done with the Cascade gin right now. It's unheard of in India, and consumers are buying it and consumers are trying it. I think that coupled with education, if I could just educate consumers on rums today as a category, because India is only exposed to the Spanish style rums all of these years, and there is a category of the Jamaican rums and the English style rums and the French style rums, which is made with the juice, sugarcane juice, and just educating consumers that there is a world out there which we have not even tried yet. I think education would play a major role for everything that could be done. I mean, if I can do it. And also, like someone earlier mentioned today about building categories. It's not just building brands, but building categories. And though we, as with Countertop, we do a lot of these experiences as a Countertop lab. One of the things that we speak about is, though I represent Short Story as a brand and Plantation in our portfolio, which is the third eye distillery, we still explore or not just compare spirits, but kind of build that category out for consumers to see that there are different styles of spirits produced by different producers. I think if you taste them simultaneously and not compare them and make people understand that this category has so much in the offering, that's something that I would definitely look at.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, India being the world's largest consumer of rum, I don't
Exactly.
see why we can't do that. So, thank you. Charlie.
I'd just like to add, if anybody wants to try some Jamaican overproof rum, we've got a seminar called Who Put That Mango in My Bottle happening very soon.
Brilliant. And finally, Ashok, magic wands in your hand now.
I think it is a hypothetical question, so I'm going to end this with a note of joke. I will bless everyone with a Patiala pig and an extra large liver.
Brilliant. Thank you. On that note, folks, you've been a wonderful audience listening to this very eminent panel. And in my thoughts, I think if the world is an oyster, India is a pearl that is yet to be discovered as far as alcoholic beverage experiences are concerned. So more power to all of us. Thank you. By popular demand, any questions from the audience to the panelists? Panelists, please stay on the stage for a bit. There might be some questions for you. Anybody, questions for the panelists? Please have a seat. 2 minutes. Well, or maybe it's time for lunch, I don't know. But in any case, wonderful audience. You have one question. Please go ahead.
Small volume industry. My name is Pratik. I've traveled all the way from Uttarakhand, Dehradun. And my request is how do guide to people like us who want to start with a small volume production so that we can build a brand first? I mean, how do we go about it?
I would actually direct that question to Pankaj because he is the smallest volume producer on the panel.
I think that's a difficult question now. No, so the only problem with India is unfortunately the way the laws work and how every state will have a different registration fee. It really puts a little cog in the wheel, I would say, for smaller producers to kind of be in every market. But there are some small producers I know that in Goa, which is an artisanal liqueur, and Mangwa now becoming an artisanal liqueur, another artisanal spirit again. I think if there is enough light, or enough recognition that the spirit brand gets in these local small producer brands, I'm sure it will, will help in progressing it to becoming a larger production, moving into different parts of the country. And hopefully government in the next couple of years would ease a few laws that even small producers like us can be everywhere in every part of the country. If that answers your question. Move forward in the direction. Vikram, help.
Well, the answer is there is no straight answer to that question. Therefore, a couple of things that I can share from my experience having run ventures in this industry for a while now. It's difficult. Let me start by acknowledging the fact that it's very difficult. And I think the closer you are to potential strategic partners that can help unlock some of the openings that you need, be it a large producer, be it a distributor, be it a retail partner, or even on-trade partners, whichever way you look at it, each one of them play a very important and distinct role in helping you scale up, especially if you're a small manufacturer. My only suggestion to you and my humble recommendation would be for you to start creating those pathways to new partnerships early on so that when the time comes, you have what it takes to scale. Any other questions from the audience? Yes, I have one hand right at the back. I'll come to you soon after he's done.
Vikram, I have just a follow-up question what you said earlier during the panel discussion that we have to focus more on building categories rather than just brands. So just my question is how, we can build a better ARTD or low alcoholic beverages category? If a panelist can
Sure.
throw the light on it.
Anybody wants to take on the question about low alcoholic or non-alcoholic category building for India? Anybody, feel free.
Vikram, it's more about low alcohol.
Low alcoholic, low alcoholic.
Because it syncs with the positive drinking and premiumization.
My favorite drink, even though I'm a spirit specialist, is vermouth and tonic. It's a very low alcohol serve. There's such a strong move towards low alcohol and no alcohol, but specifically, I think there's an interesting space for RTDs and for mixers in the low alcohol space. But specifically, I think something that's underrepresented is the idea of this 10 to 15% ABV that can be mixed. It's a price point sensitive area, low alcohol, because people don't necessarily want to pay the same for a low alcohol serve as they would pay for a spirit. But I think ultimately in the world of low alcohol and no alcohol, flavor is king. And it's really about flavor. And the one element that a lot of people don't get right, and there's a producer called Everleaf who does very well in this direction, is texture. Texture is a thing that tends to get lost very quickly in the dealcoholization process. So I think flavor and texture from a liquid point of view are the two drivers that I think will differentiate a product in that direction.
Yeah, it's basically, if the product doesn't taste any good, you're not going to sell it irrespective of how much alcohol it has or hasn't got. Taste is key. But I think that me, the key thing is to not talk about what it lacks, which is alcohol, but talk about what it has. So if you have a mindset which is this is a de-alcoholized version of X, you're never going to sell enough because your marketing is all about, hey, it doesn't include the thing that you don't like. That's not marketing. It has to be about something that has a place, a relevance, a taste, a consumer that doesn't think first, this is something, there's something missing from this, that's why I like it. But people don't think that. They think, I like this product, it's suitable for these occasions, I will buy it, I will drink it. So you've got to kind of switch it, and it's difficult because a lot of these products come from alcohol companies, and they're de-alcoholized products, so they naturally think that way. But just swap it about and have the kind of the conviction in no or low alcohol product for its own self. That's step one, and everything flows from that.
Excellent. Vikram actually tells me we're up on time. So the panelists are here through the day, so feel free to mingle with them, ask them your questions, have a chat. And I'm sure they'll be more than happy to oblige. On that note, thank you once again, and you for being such a wonderful audience. Michael?
Mr. Jason?